and all the rest of it, it dumps. So what that says to us is that if you don't give a thing meaning, then even though information is available to you, you don't get it in your conscious mind. You don't have conscious experience of it because you don't give it any meaning. And therefore, if you wish to grow in consciousness, you need to give things meaning.
You can't avoid everything you've ever experienced. Every sight, smell, sound, touch, feeling, sensation, every word, everything is still here. It's just accessing it. And its understanding, is it still important to me? If something happened once in my life that I didn't like, should I in any way respond to it today? It's not important today. What's important today is today. How can I get to where what I'm dealing with is my emotions today? That's what we're going to be focused on, so we don't make stupid things happen. Smart people do foolish things all the time. And then how many times have you said, why'd you do that? Why? That was just stupid. Let's take this journey. I'm going to be sharing some questions with you and statements. My questions and statements are not to be anything more than a suggestion, a point of departure, in the hopes that maybe some will penetrate into that subconscious and open you up and allow some variance. Everything in life has an expiration date. We plan early on in life to have everything happen with a sense of permanency. Our friendships, our relationships, everything, our health, it's always supposed to be there, so we take it for granted. When you're young, you never think about getting old, you never think about dying. When you get older, you don't think about being young and vital again because you assume you can't. Your genes can't do it. Or can they? So in the passage that we're in, we rarely appreciate the significance of that passage in relationship to everything else we're doing in life for the next stage. As a result, in our society, we have no transitions. There's no one there to help us as we go through each transition of life. We're never in the moment we're in. We're always someplace else. So by being present for the moment you're in, you're conscious of everything that's present with you. And if you're conscious of everything that's with you, you can then give it the attention that it deserves. That includes people and your companions, and includes yourself.
I noticed at a wedding that I had to do not long ago that the bride was so concerned about etiquette and about everything being absolutely perfect that she was having an absolutely miserable day. Now if you think about that, I mean, here this should be like the happiest day in her life, right? Instead of being the happiest day in her life, she was so concerned about all the little details and what's going wrong here and what's going wrong there that she wasn't present, that she wasn't being herself, that she wasn't being able to be loving to this guy that she was marrying.
How often do we master our personalities instead of our lives? Almost everyone masters how you communicate. Every little nuance, how to act and react. We have every single thing already in our defense system. So where's there any opportunity for someone to see the authentic person? If all you've done is mastered your personality, then you're always going to be what you think people want you to be in order for you to be acceptable to them. And you're not going to be anything that you're going to think is going to be rejected or criticized, are you? So as a result, we're masquerading ourselves all the time. Well, how does that allow someone to know who we are as people? What if you have thoughts that someone might reject? Well, does it make it any better because they like your personality that somehow they're going to accept your inner being? Why not just say, this is who I am, master who you are? Because every human being has beauty in them. Every human being has the wonderful quality of life. They can distort it. They can deny it. They can hide it. They can manifest a negative, toxic, violent nature, but that is not who they were born as. Every human creature is born, every human being is born with unconditional love. Between that unconditional love And what people become is the conditioned self. The authentic self is the real self. It's who you really are. But allowing yourself to be who you really are means that you have to unencumber yourself of everything you're not.
Seeking out there will never get you what you want. Seeking inside and looking for the higher self or the higher truth will get you what you want. So for example, just trying to be happy by changing a job or getting a new husband or wife is not going to make you happy necessarily. Whereas if you honestly strive internally and then come at the world through what you learn internally, you will be happier.
What if you just said, I don't have to always be hustling my personality. Giddy and chitty and wise and wonderful and sexy and clever and the Upper West Side, serious. Everyone on the Upper West Side, serious, Gary. We don't laugh. Well, we do, but we control that laugh. It's almost as, sometimes we can be dying laughing, but we control. We'll be going, ha 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 ha. You won't know it. Because if we laugh, you're not going to think we're serious. And we'd rather be known as being serious, because with seriousness means you're a suffering person, and we gain a lot from the fact that we are suffering. Like artists, we suffer.
We're living in a time where there's an inordinate amount of suffering. There's an inordinate amount of pain, there's an inordinate amount of violence all around the planet. And the planet is deeply at risk, and each and every single one of us has the capacity to be a warrior of creating a new world. And that new world is one where love and caring supersedes competitiveness and aggression.
The Buddha explained, and metapsychiatry explains, that all suffering begins with desire. We want something. We only want something because we feel we lack something. We're not at peace with what is.
As long as you're able to learn a new lesson, then the suffering is meaningful for you. You don't feel resentment and anger and all the unpleasant feelings if you learn a lesson, and that's a big if. We as mental health professionals, we need to help people to recover and discover a new meaning, because every time you have a crisis or a trauma or an unpleasant incident, your whole life and the view that you have of life changes, right? And with that, you start learning new lessons, you start growing with it.
The human ego, which is that part of our minds, not the way Freud defined it, but I think it's more the way the Easterners talk about it. It's that part of us that is more the irrational. It's a part that wants to create pain and suffering. It's a part that wants to perpetuate our suffering. It's the voice of illusion, the one that makes promises to solve problems, but always creates more of the problem. So I think that part of the mind that keeps us embedded in suffering uses the brain, uses the body in that way to make those imprints. But it really has no power except what we give to it by listening to it and believing it. And these kind of processes show us how we can take away what seems to be so powerful of that voice inside and just totally erase it and show it disappears into nothingness.
How much external and internal clutter do you have? And how much time and energy does it take to maintain it? A lot. Now that's stupid, isn't it? All that clutter. Yeah? And what good is it in the end? Because everything you thought was so important one time, sooner or later, you stop using. Well, take a look at how many clothes you got in your closet. Not enough, she said. No, she wants more clutter. But most people have an enormous amount of clutter. Just look in the average person's garage and attic and everywhere. Well, what would happen if you just said, all right, 3 things are going to happen. I'm going to use it regularly, give it away, or throw it away. And I'm not going to give it to a charity. I'm going to find a person who could use this and give it to another human being. Recognize that person's needs and honor them and give it to them. But we're afraid to let go of things. Why? Because our clutter represents our successes. It represents the different stages of our evolution. You are what you possess. You are what you achieve. You are what you're recognized for. So if you're recognized for doing more and collecting more, then you have to have more to show that you have some substance. Who recognizes the person who doesn't have the big house? Who recognizes the person who doesn't have the great bod, the big bank account? Just look at our media. Everything's about getting that clutter.
How do we distinguish between what we believe we need and what we really need? It is a very difficult question also, because we are of course guided by what we believe. We cannot help being guided by that. So how do we really know what we need? Ego, our own selfish nature based on conditioning, is always trying to guide us to that which seems to be attractive, which seems that it will please us. But what pleases us is not necessarily what we need to do. This is the fundamental question for which I have to find an answer. And the only answer that I have found useful for myself is always this one thing: not to take myself, not to take me and my wants and my pleasures and my belief system very serious.
You are more significant than what you achieve. You're more significant than your career, you're more significant than your possessions or your money. That means that we could take the poorest American and the wealthiest American, and on a scale of spirituality, they could be equals. But when did we ever put a person who is poor up on Time Magazine Person of the Year, or People's 50 Prettiest, right? Why is it they're always actors and actresses? We got to realize we're rather superficial in what we consider to be the best of anything. We manifest very complex lifestyles instead of authentic ones. Why do we make our life so complex? Why? Why not make it simple? Wouldn't it be wonderful if you woke up each day and everything was kind of simple? Because you didn't have the clutter, and you didn't have to go prove yourself. You didn't have to prove your love to someone. You didn't have to prove your obedience to some belief. You didn't have to go through rituals and dogmas and creeds to prove that you should be respected. What if we took all that out of our life and simply said, I'm an authentic soul, and my life is simple, and I'm happy?
Much of our life we are searching to find meaning in life. But to find that meaning, to find the truth of what is really important, we need to be quiet and attentive. The quality of our life and the ability to find meaning depends on the acuity of our attention.
We don't know how to sit quietly, so all the time we need something to be busy. So we distract ourselves with this and that. Attention deficit, of course, is a common problem, even with children. And adults have it too. It's a quality that Easterners, India from where I came from, call the quality of Rajas, the quality of kings. Kings used to be very impatient people. Today we all have become a little bit like king in that way.
Think of what we do to get to a point where we feel that we'll be able to have a simplified life. Think of the person, the two guys, just the other day, two of the most successful guys on Wall Street, both extremely stressed. One guy he's 44 years old, he's got heart disease. The other guy had a major occlusion in his artery, right artery, and they're both on meds. So finally they take a trip, they go down to this island in the Caribbean, one of the U.S. Islands, and they're jogging down a beach, and there's this guy, and it's a beautiful picture, palm tree. It's right at the end of a curve around the beach. Guy's sitting there. He's playing the guitar. And the guys are kind of interested in this. And they go over and they're chatting with him. And what do you do? And he says, I fish. Where do you fish? I fish the Barrier Reef. What kind of boat? 12-foot boat. How much fish do you catch? Enough. Well, you realize, and these are two of Wall Street's best, you realize that if you got a bigger boat, you could fish outside the Barrier Reef where all the fish are, and you could supply fish to the hotel that doesn't have fresh fish where we're staying. We're getting frozen fish that taste like sponge, and then that would give you great business. Within 5 years, you could buy a bigger boat, and you could go further down to the north end of Venezuela, and where you can get red snapper, and red snapper is a major, major fish. You could go up to Miami and you could have a lot of money. Within 5 years after that, you could get an IPO. You come to us, we could get you at least a fleet of boats. Within 12 years from that, you could have enough money. A lot of work, a lot of stress, but you could have enough money to go to a beach, sit on a palm tree, and play the guitar. What we do, the hoops we jump through, for what? We've run away from passion, pleasure, and fulfillment. We didn't notice it when it was present because we were looking for something else.
All of us like to forget that we're mortal. We have the freedom to take whatever time is left to us and to use it to its fullest, which is what those of us who dwell in the illusion of immortality don't do.
The best way to start is to look at what would take us out of the moment. The moment is somewhere in between the past and the future. So what takes us into the past? Largely it's guilt. It's what went wrong, wish I'd have done that different, you know, but we really don't have to live there. I mean, guilt is not a very pleasant place. We would all agree that. Right? There's really no guilt in the moment. There's no guilt when I'm focused. There's no guilt when I'm just being who I'm really supposed to be. So the other alternative is that we're wandering into the future. And very often the essential relationship we have with the future is one of fear. This is kind of what if. What if I get sick? What if I don't have enough money? What if there's nobody to take care of me? What if all the, not that any of these things are happening, but it's kind of a what if. So we got if only back here in guilt, we got what if up here in the future in terms of fear, both of which are keeping us from being here.
Keep only what is essential for your life. If it's not essential, don't keep it. Don't try to possess it. That means when you wake up in the morning, what do you need for the essentials of your life? And once you have it, stop looking. I live in a building on the west side. It's a baby boomers from hell building. Everybody's yelling. My neighbor screaming the other day. I had to go knock on the door and says, you know, someone's going to call the police. Certainly someone did call the police because these people are always screaming and they're successful, but not successful enough to be happy. Because when you need something out there to make you feel good in here, there's never going to be enough to fill that void. And when you're trying to prove yourself, and we're a society that judges each other based upon our provings. Prove to me. Prove what to you? Prove that you're a loving person, a good person, that you can be trusted, that you can be honored? What do you have to prove? If you're insisting someone prove something to you, that's a relationship you ought not to get near. And yet we prove all the time. We prove we're tough, or we'll prove that we're going to get justice. Every time I see someone trying to get justice for something, I see another crisis. I see another problem occurring. Stop proving yourself. You don't need to prove yourself. You think you do, because society creates a standard that you're trying to meet. When they said, Gary, after this debate I did when I was just coming into the field of health and nutrition, it was down in Atlanta. And I was tired. I'd been on this long tour, and I'd gotten in there early in the morning off the red eye from Los Angeles. And I'm only like 24 years old. And I was there to talk about the importance of organic produce, or that's what I was told. I walk into the studio, and suddenly I see 5 guys with folders. And I said, what's this about? And the producer said, oh, the bloodletting's about to begin. I said, what bloodletting? Whose blood? Yours. I said, for what? Why? Well, these are all people, you know, who think that your statements are radical and irresponsible. Which statements? You know, that the sugar's bad and colas are bad and meat's bad. Well, who are they affiliated with? Oh, they're doctors. No, who, what? So I asked him, before we go on the air, I said, are any of you affiliated with Coca-Cola? They wouldn't answer me. Yeah. And it was all about protecting the special interest group. So when the show went on, do you have a PhD? No. Well, do you have a? No. Are you a? No. Well, what gives you the right to? I don't know. Why'd you invite me? So I argued with him on the issue of common sense.